Welcome to biztech's Community Conversation Show. Now, today we've got a special show with our guest, Ivy Ngeow, who is an award-winning author. Ivy was born and raised in Johor Bahru in Malaysia and is currently based in the UK. She holds an MA in writing for Middlesex University, where she won in 2005 the Middlesex University Literary Press Prize out of 1,500 entrants worldwide. Her debut book, Cry of the Flying Rhino, in 2017, was awarded the International Proverse Prize in Hong Kong. Her other novels include Heart of Glass in 2018, Overboard in 2020, and White Cranes Strikes in 2022. She is also, her latest book is The American Boyfriend, published by Penguin in 2023, which was longlisted for the Avon and Mushins Entertainment Prize for Commercial Fiction Writers of Color in 2022. Now, without further ado, Ivy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well. And just as a disclaimer to the audience, Ivy and I went to primary school together. We both come from this town in Malaysia called Johor Bahru, which is on the border with Singapore. Now, Ivy, on that note, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into writing.
Growing up in Johor Bahru, which, as you know, is about 75% working class, I've always craved a kind of culture and an escape. And I found my escape through books. My favorite shop was Johor Central Store, which is on Jalan Ibrahim, if you
Which is
remember
still
that.
there now, but it doesn't quite have the amount of books. They've had to
Ah,
downsize significantly, and have knickknacks and so forth. But that was the bookshop, I think, when we were growing up.
I think that's the case with a lot of bookshops nowadays. There's so much competition, and the indies have been forced out. And those bookshops that remain have to diversify and sell stationery, school stuff, even I think even water bottles. So I think they have to cater for people who are just browsing and who are not really there for books. Um, so I remember it being crammed from floor to ceiling, like in any proper self-respecting Indian Muslim store has stuff from floor to ceiling, and it was very very exciting for me. It was like an Aladdin's cave, and I remember reading so quickly that my mom said, "That's it, we have to join the library." So my mom got me a library card when I was about 8 or 9 at the Sultan Ismail Library in Johor Bahru, and she was also a school teacher, so she used to bring home books from her own school library, which is the SETA school in JB. And so from there, I grew my interest in reading and in discovering other worlds that were outside Johor Bahru. I remember being, it being a very thrilling concept to be able to escape in just pages to another world.
And we had a different background also compared to a lot of people living in Johor Bahru, because we went to school in another country. We went to school in Singapore. So literally we went, from living at that time really a what I used to term really third world country. We traveled from the third world to the first world and back again every day. And so that obviously, like me, shaped your thinking tremendously as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it opened a window for us, which other children probably did not have the opportunity of doing so. Seeing into that first world, and seeing another country every day.
Absolutely. So you went to school in Singapore, and then after that went to the UK. When did you and trained to be an architect? But when did you start really writing?
I started writing even as a child in Johor Bahru because I was very creative. I always drew diagrams or pictures. If I liked the book, I would draw the characters, or I would draw diagrams or the settings. They would always inspire me. Or would see something on TV and I would like, oh, that's it. I'm going to copy that character and I'm going to, make diagrams up. And then eventually those diagrams also became stories. So I could entertain myself when the book was over. And I didn't know it was writing. I just thought that, well, that's nice. I've just done a drawing and, a little story or a paragraph about somebody or whatever. So that kind of was really the start of writing for me, which I didn't know at the time, but it's actually an extension of reading. It feels like it was still part of some book or some TV show that I just watched. So it was still part of that world. I only started writing seriously when I was traveling for work or when I was already qualified. I didn't write a word in university because basically I was too busy being a student, living as a student. So I didn't write a word. And then when I was starting to travel for work and stuff, I found I had a lot of downtime and I was alone. I was in airports, I was in duty free, I was in hotels, and a lot of the time I was not very sociable. I was not really partying hard like everybody else. So I felt like I enjoyed going back to the very a quiet space. I could tune out everything that was around me, and I started making up stories about passengers, that people I would see, or something that had happened on the plane. I would write something about it just to entertain myself, because I think people tend to forget that when we write, we entertain ourselves first. It's fun to make up stories or to, put glasses on them when you draw diagrams or things like that. Like, it's just for fun. I didn't think anything would come of it. And then when I was taking it a bit more seriously, I decided to do a master's. I mean, before that, I had done evening classes, just creative writing, which would train me in writing short stories. But I always thought that I'm going to write something bigger, and it would be something that I would really enjoy. I want to put time into this. So I enrolled to do a master's in writing at Middlesex University, and that's where I wrote my first novel, the one that won the prize.
And then when did you then make that leap? And this is several years later, when you actually got your Cry of the Flying Rhino published in 2017. Tell us about that shift then. For the architect then started to write professionally. How did that happen?
When you win a prize and when you have your first novel published, you feel very endorsed and very validated by the industry. Before that is something that sort of doesn't really matter. It's like baking. If I bake a cake that nobody ate, it doesn't matter. I would eat it myself. It's fine. But then when you win an award for that cake that you made, you feel that this is actually quite professional. So it takes you away from feeling that you're amateurish to feeling that you should probably do more. If people feel that this is something that is worth rewarding, then I should, make more an effort. So I've always sort of like written like whenever I could to make up the word count and to get more books out. So my aim had always been to get better and better at writing. So the publishing side, I think
it's 11:30.
It's like a side thing. Like we may not, a lot of stuff that I write isn't published. So I write for fun. So, and when I feel that it's ready, then I would try to market it.
So it's interesting that, Ivy, you became quite a prolific writer. You published in 2017, 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2023. Now, that's quite a lot of discipline involved. Tell us about what was your motivations and how did you come up with your ideas?
I would say that I think ideas are all around us, especially if you ask anybody in the creative industry, in the design industry. We don't wake up and wait for the inspiration to drop onto our laps. It may not. I feel that there are ways to get more, inspired and creative when you start to think in a creative way, and I think it's called the creative mindset. When we feel that we have to make something, okay, and I think it comes with experience and practice, like how to get ideas, even from the world around us, even from the very mundane world around us. So I tend to write not about the kitchen sink or whatever's around me.
Okay.
Otherwise I'll be writing very boring things that are set in my own office or in my own four rooms. I try to think of characters who are not me, and characters who are doing things which they are conflicted, or I try to think of settings which are exciting. Like in my books, they're all set in exciting places like Chicago, Hong Kong, Borneo. So the places that I may or may not have been. Usually I have been, but I feel that places which take me away from like your own kitchen sink or your desk or whatever, they're inspiring. We all are, and I think humans, we do tend to love something that's slightly different or exotic, or something that's that takes us away from mundane stuff.
Okay, then tell us about your latest book, The American Boyfriend, which you've also gone on a book tour as well. Tell us about the storyline, what inspired you, and what do you hope to achieve from the book?
So the American Boyfriend was written in November of 2021, and I was very inspired by the fact that if you know London, it's cold, dark, and gray, and also wet, especially in November. So it's a great time for writing because you do need to use your mind to escape. You are surrounded by that every day, and often it doesn't even get very bright. There's hardly any daylight. So I wanted to write about somewhere sunny, but a bit creepy, and a bit like Malaysia, because I think Florida is somewhere where I have been, and it's darker and creepier than Malaysia because of the gun culture. So I was inspired to write and to explore that side of another culture's reality. I wanted to explore and find out, and also bring that into my writing, so that also illuminates the readers that it's not our culture in Malaysia, but it is somebody else's, and also the conflict of the character who is Malaysian, a single mom who travels there, and how she handles the culture shock.
Interesting. Now, Ivy, I want you to then maybe give us some insights, because it's still fresh in your mind, of in 2024 now. You've just published a book. You've just been on book tours to Southeast Asia, to India as well. What's the ecosystem for publishing like in 2024? Is there money to be made in publishing anymore?
There is money to be made, but the competition is very high. Obviously, we have to compete as writers with TV and movies, which are very good now. So books have to form their own market. Okay, we writers attract readers the same as readers attract writers. So I think in the current climate, writers do need a reading community, and it's become more a community-based arts. So for example, like I've written this book now, which thanks to the publicity, promo and marketing team, have reached a reading community or in the thousands, which would not have been available to us, because as a writer you work alone. You're going to be writing at a desk somewhere. Even if you think you're in a cafe, you are still writing alone. So to reach that network is pretty much impossible without platforms. So one of the platforms would be digital publishing, because digital publishing reaches an international audience. And also like with the tours that I've done, because I'm using the tours to meet readers in person. This would not have been available either in the pandemic years.
And Ivy, this is because you're a published author. So The American Boyfriend is published by Penguin, right? Which obviously is a brand name. is that something, because people have gone more the digital route, which is why I'm sure our audience will be interested to find out from you, what is the ratio like in terms of physical books versus digital books for fiction writers like yourself?
I think it would depend on the genre in fiction, because now we're having a lot more sub-genres and subcategories compared to the past because of digital publishing. Every book needs to fit into a category or shelf. And in fact, they need to fit into three. They need to fit so well that they can be found easily by the reader. And in the past, it's either fiction or non-fiction. So in the past, it was more general because it was print publication.
Yes.
And now so now because of the digital publishing phenomenon that's taken over, writers and readers both have to think carefully about where a book actually fits. And if it lands in the cart, the digital cart of the wrong reader, it wouldn't go down well, because then the algorithms would possibly harm the book's success.
Okay. Are there digital book platforms that perhaps are like, and let me use an equivalent analogy of an industry that it's completely reinvented itself, completely changed its business model, which is music. So when you and I were growing up 40 years ago, and that's just giving the audience an idea of our ages, obviously, we went and bought albums on initially it was cassettes or vinyl, and then it was CDs. We would go and buy music, would buy an album, and would pay money for it. Today, the business model for music has changed dramatically. So people basically subscribe to streaming services and basically then listen to all you can eat a buffet of music for a fixed fee every month. But what happened is the commercialization model has changed. So you even have, which is quite fascinating, my daughter, who is 15, listening to artists from the 70s and 80s and 90s. And then I've discovered that the Duran Durans and the New Orders of this world are still touring well into their 50s and 60s. So they've got longevity, but the business model of the music industry has changed. It's basically become where they monetize by touring, and they get small slivers out of revenue consistently out of the streaming platforms. Are there similar sort of things in the publishing industry, that all you can eat platforms and so forth?
Oh, there most definitely is. I mean, if anybody goes on to Amazon, you can find free books, like thousands of free books every day. And there are reasons for this as well. Like, I mean, a lot of writers actually they want to give away their work because they want to get more readers too. So there's two ways to look at this. And secondly, writers also have to supplement their income by doing events, tours, talks. So these all help to build the writer's body of work. To be doing it is something practical rather than like passive.
And I suppose then, in terms of and moving away from the realm of fiction, especially in the self-help realm, that's where the opportunity is. The book is the conduit to monetizing the speaking engagements, the coaching engagements, and the training engagements.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The memoir self-help, like they've become a guru because they wrote a memoir and they also went through, something that differentiates them from somebody who's just a practitioner. So I think that the memoir self-help is yet another kind of subgenre.
Now, Ivy, want to take a step back and you've made this journey, taking your passion and turning it into something that's commercial, but really you could see very clearly you're doing this out of your love for writing and for creating. what advice would you give aspiring authors who are perhaps, in various age groups? Could be aspiring authors like my daughter is only 15 who writes for fun, who writes for leisure, but there are also many aspiring authors who perhaps just come to the tail end of just retired, suddenly find that they have time on their hands and perhaps want to finally do something that they wanted to do as a child but never got around to do it.
My advice for writers of all levels and all ages would be to keep writing. And I think that your daughter is right. The only reason why we do it is for fun. Because if it's not fun, then I think something is wrong with it. It's like saying to a baker, I always come back to baking because it's like the crazy thing. Like it's like a science, it's like an art. Writing is like that. So if they hate it, why are they doing it? They wouldn't be doing it. They bake because they love it. And I think that's the only reason that and then you also have to like read a lot because you need to know what's out there, what's fantastic, what books make you really moved, or books that have entertained you or have taught you something. What did they teach you and why? Why did you like it so much? So I think that one of the reasons that we write is because we like something, but we want our own. Okay, we love eating those cakes, but we want to make our own. I think that and then with that comes practice. Obviously, the more cakes you're making, the better you are at it, and also the more you are creating maybe interesting stuff. You'll be creating interesting stuff, and you still be appealing to an audience that like your previous cakes. So I think that I love using that analogy because it just makes sense to me. It's just that it's quicker to bake a cake than to write a book. That's probably the only difference there.
Ivy, it's been a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure our audience does as well. But before we leave, any final thoughts you'd like to leave us before we end the conversation?
I'd like to say thank you so much, Brian. I really enjoyed growing up with you and enjoying the stuff that we enjoyed as kids. And I wish we could bottle that and share that with the kids of today. The music and the books that we enjoyed, the crossing of the causeway. I think, all these are little gems from my childhood, and I'm glad we experienced it because that's what made us who we are today.
Absolutely. Ivy, thank you very much for taking your time to come on the show.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a real pleasure.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to award-winning author Ivy Ngeow, coming to us out of the UK. And this has been BizTech's Community Conversation Show. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks a lot for tuning in.